Welcome to PTSD Self-Healing Show, a journey to self-discovery. I'm your host, Panta Kalhor. Episode 18, Dealing with PTSD when your loved one is involved, with Fiona Barr, certified hypnotherapist and NLP coach. Welcome to PTSD Self-Healing and Support. I'm Panta Kalhor, your host. And I'm talking about post-trauma disease, which many people confront with this, and many people have this problem in their life. So this PTSD is a very broad conversation, is not just one side of your life. You may have PTSD after losing your job. You may have it after losing your wife, your partner, or you have a grief for your kid. So any of these areas related to PTSD, even if you are not going for the treatment as many people go, but that's fine. You can again find it in yourself and cure it somehow, because not all the PTSD diagnosed mind, some of them are very wild and very difficult to cure. Today we have Fiona Barr. She's a self-care and self-care specialist. She's a hypnotherapist, and PTSD caregiver. She has 17 years of experience working with people who has these issues. Welcome to our show, Fiona. I'm so happy to have you in this show, and I'm so glad you can share your experience with my audience.
Thank you very much for having me. This is a topic that is very near and dear to my heart.
Yes. So let me know, how did you end up helping people with these issues?
Well, I mean, when I worked as a social worker in child protection, there was many people who had trauma, whether it was the parents, whether it was the children. But I think back when I started, PTSD was not really a topic that was broadly discussed. It was just kind of covered under like the mental health umbrella. But we all know that trauma has long-ranging impact on our lives. And whether it's something that happened to us when we were a child and how it impacts us as we grow older, or whether it's one moment in time that can impact everything moving forward. And that's the piece about PTSD, is that it is like a brain injury, right? Like it's not something that you can medicate. You can't give it a pill and make it go away. It's a long road to recovery, and it can be very painful, the road to recovery. While I have never been diagnosed with PTSD, I have been a caregiver through my work and as a wife. My husband was diagnosed with PTSD, and it changed who we were. It changed who he was, but it also changed who I was. So just like a little backstory here was, I am very much a caregiver. I'm very much someone who wants people's needs to be met. I want you to be safe. I want you to be happy. I want all those things for you. But when he was given that diagnosis, he'd also had a heart attack the year before. So he was, he'd recovered from that, and then he had this PTSD. And I went into this, oh my God, I have to keep him safe. I have to keep him safe. I want to wrap him in plastic bubble wrap, the big kind with the big bubbles, just to keep him safe. The piece about PTSD that I learned through this is that when you have the diagnosis of PTSD, often you feel like you have no control in your life, because the thing that happened was out of your control, and it takes away any idea that you can have control again. So when you have someone like myself who just wants to keep you safe, wants to wrap you in plastic bubble wrap, wants to control every part of your life, that is not a good thing. And I learned that the hard way, because all someone with a diagnosis wants is to have control back. But I was taking control and I was taking it away. And so it was not helpful at all. And it actually made things worse for him, because it created this divide in our relationship that I didn't understand, because I was like, wait, I just want you to be safe. Why won't you do the things that I'm telling you to do? And because I didn't understand that he was just trying to get control back of his life. That's all. So once I figured that piece out, unfortunately it was too late for our marriage. But now I know, and I full responsibility for my part in that, and so now when people talk to me about PTSD, I'm like, you know what, you need to look after yourself. As the caregiver, you need to look after yourself, because it is a, I tell people that, like, when it moved into my life, it changed everything about our family, everything. I think I was very fortunate that there was no violence in our family. There was no violence, and I do know that, worst case scenario, there can be violence because the person with the diagnosis can be easily triggered. There was no violence, so I was very, very fortunate in that, and thankful for that. But it didn't make it any harder. I was always walking on eggshells. What if I say this? What if I do that? And it creates an event and it triggers him and it does this. So I started to shut down almost, right? Because I didn't want to create a problem.
I got it.
I can't control him, so I will control everything about me, to the fact that I shut down so that there was no events. But that didn't work either.
What is the difference between depression, anxiety, and PTSD?
Oh gosh, that's well, now I'm not a clinical psychotherapist. Anxiety is that piece where, some people will say, I'm anxious about this thing, or I'm anxious, but that's not true anxiety. A true anxiety is where everyday activities cause you to almost shut down. I can't do this. I can't do this thing because what happens? What if this happens? What if that happens? Right? Like, that's anxiety, is not being able to control the situation. And, and almost, like, the worst case scenario always is the piece in your mind, right? Depression is that, and there's different kinds of depression, right? Like, there's the kind of depression where all you want to do is sleep. You just stay in your bed. You don't eat, you don't drink, you don't look after yourselves. You just want to sleep. Then there's the depression that someone like you or I, we go about our day, we smile, we have coffee with friends, but we come home, we close our door, and we cry.
Wow.
And we're sad. Right? And that's it. That's a different kind of depression, right? Depression is one of those illnesses that comes in many forms. But the bottom line is that it's almost like you have this low energy. I don't want to do anything. Just leave me alone.
So
just leave me alone.
PTSD can hold anxiety and depression.
Yes. PTSD is like this big ugly monster that you can have anxiety and you can have depression, because PTSD is it's like there is an event that happens, and it can be the death of someone, being in a car accident, witnessing a car accident. I was at a training one time, and the trainer said it could even be you were a little girl and you didn't get the shoes that you wanted to have. Everyone else had the same shoes at school, and you wanted those shoes to be like everybody else, and your parents didn't get them for you. That is the start of a traumatic incident. So it's almost like this umbrella, right? And then what happens is you have all these other secondary illnesses that come from it. So it's a terrible, terrible disease or illness or diagnosis, whatever term you want to use it for it. Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah, it's not. But is there any? How can we get help for PTSD? I know that
Um,
it's not. That's not for everybody. That I mean, the degrees is different from one to
right,
another. When you have a breakdown, like doesn't matter if you break up with somebody, have a divorce, or lose your job, somehow you have PTSD, post trauma.
right, right.
It may not be very wild and very severe, but still you have it. You
That's
may
right,
cry for years for losing somebody or even
right,
breaking up with somebody. These are PTSD, all of them.
right. I believe with PTSD there is criteria.
Mhm.
Right. Like there's like, I know that myself, I was seeing a therapist and we went through the criteria and I didn't meet the criteria for the diagnosis
Mhm.
of PTSD. It did not mean I did not have trauma in my life. But like within many diseases, right, like in order to get the label, we have to have meet the criteria. But with PTSD, I mean, there's some fabulous therapists out there. And I know that people use cognitive behavioral therapy. So changing, using the, like understanding what happened, going to the, like if it was an event, like if you were in a terrible car accident or you witnessed something someplace, right, like going to the place with your therapist where that event happened and understanding that you're safe now, that nothing bad is going to happen, that the thing that happened in the past and it's done, and you can now go to that place and there is nothing bad happening in that one specific place. And so there was a I spoke to a therapist one time and there was someone who had been in a terrible train accident, and so she took him to the train yard. She took him to the place where the accident was so that she could show him that the thing that happened, and yes, it was a terrible thing, but it is not here. It's not here anymore, and you are safe. And now you can come back to this place and be safe. And that's one form of therapy for PTSD. But again, I'm not the clinician. So I mean, I'm sure there's lots of ways to treat PTSD, and it's
There are,
depending on the
yes,
severity.
because as you said, with as a PTSD coach, I know that it shouldn't be therapy all the time. It's
Right.
you can do the coaching and people can do the self recovery for themselves. I
Yes.
know in when they are in a clinical threshold, yes, they have to go to doctor, they have to see them, and
Yes.
they have to follow with them. But as myself, because I was in the PTSD mode, when somebody robbed my car and threw me out of the car, and then I had back injury, and always I had this nightmare as somebody is following me.
Hmm.
This is kind of remembering things, and I didn't want to remember. I didn't want to
Hmm.
remind myself that this happened to me. So I'm not exactly don't understand why therapists want to ask you to want why they ask you to remember this, because I didn't want to. I didn't want to get back there, and I didn't want to remind
Right.
memories that it happened to me. The only thing changed my beliefs and those nightmares was replacing good dreams and replacing better outcomes. And then I forgot about that.
Right.
I mean, but it takes time. It is not just one day recovery. You cannot just lose someone and you say, okay, you have to laugh and you have to smile. No, you
That's right.
can't. It takes time. And as you said, when we prior or talk, we talk about triggers and
Right.
how can we confront with triggers?
I think the piece with triggers is that I mean, so if uh, you drop a wine glass, and it breaks. That can be a trigger for someone, right? And so knowing what's going to happen, and sometimes specifically, oh, if I do this thing, it is a trigger for my partner. So not doing that thing. But oftentimes I don't know what's going to trigger. I don't know what's going to happen. So, you drop a glass and it breaks, and it's the trigger. It's the moment in time that sets off an event. What I did was when I figured out what I should be doing, because initially with my husband, when he would have a moment, I would try to talk to him. I would try to soothe him. I would try to comfort him. That was the wrong thing to do. It's not what he wanted. So what I learned was that, can I touch you? Can I give you a hug? Can I speak with you? Getting their permission to engage with them. Because what it does, it gives them control of the situation as well. That's if there's no violence, right? Like, and sadly, sometimes with events, there is violence. And so, you need to keep yourself safe. And if you have children in your home, you need to keep them safe, right? So it's removing yourself from the situation if it's safe to do so. Right? Like, worst case scenario, calling for help. But typically, my experience was when I learned. Sorry?
You were disconnected. Just wait.
Oh.
Okay.
Am I back?
Yeah.
I'm back. Oh, what was it?
Yeah.
So it's about safety for everybody, right? Like, so if you have to call for support, you call for support. If it's a really terrible incident and you don't feel safe, leave the home, get out of the house if you can, right? Or lock yourself in the room, go somewhere where you're safe.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I was just going to say.
Sorry, go ahead.
If it's something that, there's no violence, there's just this person, your partner just needs time, ask them, can I hug you? Can I help you? How can I help you?
I love it.
And then just leave them be. Let them work through it.
I think PTSD is different for women and men. I don't know if you read the book Women from Venus. I don't remember.
I read parts of it, yes.
Yes. So men and women are different, because men usually shut down everything. They don't want to talk about this. They want to go to their room and shut the door, be there themselves. But women may want to talk about that. When you feel alone, you want to go to your friend, or you want to desperately talk about this. But men really don't want to do this. So I think it's different from men and women, and some even in men.
Oh, for sure.
So as you said, you have to ask them if you need help, if you need hug, or what kind of help I can offer.
Right.
All right.
What do you need from me right now? Yeah.
Exactly. Now, what are biggest steps into PTSD recovery?
The biggest steps to recovery?
Mm-hmm. Do you have any method?
I mean, I think that my experience was finding a good therapist. Mm-hmm. Finding a therapist that is going to help you navigate this road, and not to rush the process, because it takes time. It can take years, right? To allow yourself to feel the feelings, but not getting stuck. And that's the piece where the therapist can help you understand that this is the event happened and it's over, and you're safe now, right? The biggest piece is finding that therapist that's going to get you to a place where you have a really good understanding of it is, and you have the coping skills, and you have the pieces that you need. Once you're at that place, you know, hire a coach, hire a hypnotherapist, hire, you know,
Definitely needs help. Yeah.
something, the next steps, right?
What about the grief? How can we overcome grief? I know it's not going to be easy as well, like losing someone or
Grief is so hard. I mean, if we're talking about PTSD, I mean, like the grief for me was I lost my husband. Like he was still alive, but he was not the person I married. So I grieved that loss. When you're talking about grief, you know, when my mother passed away, there was grief there, but I had done a lot of visiting with her and seeing her before she died. So I kind of grieved while she was still alive. So when she died, I was okay with it because I'd done all the things I needed to do. Grief is something that impacts everybody differently. And, you know, they say that there's the 7 stages of grief that we all go through, but we all go through it differently. You know, and we need to not judge ourselves when we're going through it. You know, like if you need to spend a day crying because someone you love has died, spend the day crying. But then the next day get up and go about your business. Right? Like, but allow yourself to feel those feelings. If you get angry because someone you love has died, be angry. And then the next day,
let your emotion come out.
yes, yeah. Because I'm a firm believer that if you bottle up your emotions, it's got to come out somewhere.
Yes.
It's got to come out somehow. It's like this monster that's building up inside of you, and you're gonna explode at some point.
Exactly.
And whether that's through anger or through sadness and crying or self-harming behaviors, right? You know, like that's having those good coping skills and understanding that this is grief, and yes, I've lost this person and I will never see this person again, but I still have the memories. They're still here in my heart. They're still here in my mind. Their physical body is no longer here, but they're still with me somehow, somewhere.
I love it.
When you get to that point, your grief is, you know, you've done all of the things that you needed to do, and your grief is now, it's not grief anymore. It's now memory. You know? Yeah.
Okay, I really enjoyed talking to you, and that was our first episode in PTSD. And
yes.
hopefully my audience also enjoy it. I'm so glad to have you in this episode. And
thank you.
I wish you luck and too much success, so much success.
Yes, you as well. You as well. I'm looking forward to seeing what happens in our Facebook groups that we're in.
Yes, sure.
And you know, and anyone can reach out to me. I'm here to talk.
Yes.
To talk. If
someone
needs to talk, I'm here.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Fiona. Thank you.
You're very welcome. You have a great evening.
You too. Bye.